Today I'm starting to work on the assembly of the barn door hardware to hang that sliding door in the opening behind me. So I'm going to head downstairs and start working on getting the rollers mounted on the door and then laying out for where the track is going to go on the wall. The hardware set that I got for this is actually from Rustica Hardware, and it is their Harvest set. And this is for a bi-parting door, and all the different pieces are organized in bags. The track, because mine is almost 14 feet long, is in 2 pieces. I'll have to splice it in the center. This hardware looks great. It definitely is more robust than some of the sliding door hardware that you see. The downside to the Rustica Hardware is that it did not come with the instructions in the box. You actually have to go onto their website, and I printed those out so that I could bring them to the basement or take them everywhere that I'm going. In terms of getting these rollers laid out and mounted to the door, it is really important that everything is square and that these are set at exactly the same height above the top of the door so that the door will hang vertical and plumb. If one of the doors is off, what'll happen, because this is a bi-parting door, is I'll end up with a gap in the middle, or you'll actually be able to see how the doors are off. So it's really important that I get this right. Now, the instructions say that this hanger metal to the edge needs to be 2 inches from the edge of the door. It also, of course, like I said, needs to be square. Then there needs to be 2 3/8 inches from the top of the door to the bottom of the wheel. So the way that I'm tackling this is this square has a 2-inch wide leg right here. So that is setting this bracket 2 inches off the edge of the door. I have this set perfectly square to the other edge of the door so that I know that this is going to be squared up to the door. Now, to get the 2 3/8, it's very difficult with a tape measure to try and measure from the top of the door to the roller. So what I did is I pushed it down so that the roller is flush with the door. Then you can come over here and see that it is at 10 3/4 inches. So all I need to do is go back 2 3/8 inches with the bottom of the hardware, and then I will know that the roller is 2 3/8 inches off the top of the door. So once I do that, I then mark the bottom edge and I mark the inside edge with the pencil, because this hole will actually be on top of the metal of the square at that point. And I mark that hole, then I remove the square, set this back in place based on my lines, and I mark the other hole. So we'll go ahead and do that for this hanger. There's that 2 3/8. I'm tracing the full outline of that circle, and then I'm putting a little dot right in the center. And then this is all squared up. So I'm going to put a mark here. We'll take that off. Slip this out. I can set my hanger back on here. We're lined up at the bottom, lined up at the top. Outline the hole. I also drilled the 1/8 inch diameter pilot hole. So you drill one of these for each one of the hanger bolts, and it goes clean through to the other side. And then what you do is you flip the door over to drill the countersink for the other side of the bolt, which is actually the nut head. And so And that is a 1 1/8 inch diameter hole. So I'm going to flip the door and then get the drill set up to drill those 1 1/8 inch diameter countersinks. I'm going to go ahead and drill these. The instructions suggest using a Forstner bit. You can also use a butterfly bit. This is not a standard cheap butterfly bit. You'll notice it's got a worm on it to help pull it in, and a really sharp cutting tip here because I don't want to split out the wood around the hole. Now I just need to vacuum up these shavings, and then I'm actually going to take some stain and work it into those holes because you can see we've exposed wood that's not stained. And the issue is the bolts will be countersunk and there's a washer that goes in here, but you'll still see this edge. And so I want the color to match a little better. So I'm going to vacuum this out and then go ahead and put some stain in there. Now that I've got some stain in these holes, the door needs to be flipped back over again. And I'm going to drill out following those pilot holes with a 3/8 inch diameter bit so that the bolts can actually go through. All right, same thing on the other one. Now that the rollers are on the doors, what I need to do is start laying out for the track. And to do that, I actually need to put a level line across the top of the doorway, which will be the center line of the track. The instructions say to put a mark at 2 1/8 inches above the door height. That will allow for a 1/2 inch gap beneath the door and the correct clearance for the track. Now this doorway, the floor is not perfectly level. So it's a 1/4 inch lower on this side than it is on this side. So I'm going to make my measurements from the high side so the gap at the bottom will just be a little bit bigger as the floor dives away, but at least we'll have sufficient clearance on that high side. The recommended way to do this is to have 2 people. If you're by yourself, the best thing to do is rest the track against the upper door trim, and then you can mark the holes by eyeballing above the track. It's difficult to see, but we have a level line struck at the center line of the track the whole way across. And then I've put a series of tick marks. You can just see one there. There's another one there. The series of tick marks is the holes where the lag screws will go through to hold the track to the wall. So the next step is to drill out those holes with a 1/4 inch bit and then begin to hang the track with the spacers between the wall and the track. All right, so here is the track. Because this track is nearly 14 feet long, it comes in 2 pieces and it has to be spliced in the middle. So this is the splice plate that goes in the back, and then this is the center stop, which goes in the front. Now this came with these little pads that you stick on there. I already stuck those on. So this has to go on the front, this goes on the back, and you have to get all of that in when you put the bolts into the wall. On the other end of the track, you have these stops, which again, I had to put the little pad or stick the little pad on here. And it's the same thing. This goes on the front, and then the bolt has to go through this and through the track. So you have to have these on when you go to put the track up to the wall. These are the spacers that go behind. And here at the center, these two are actually set 1/8 of an inch shorter than the rest because this is going to be on the back of the track and this splice plate is 1/8 inch thick. Now, I've set them all at 2 3/8, which is going to put the track out close to 2.5 because that sits flush at the back of the track. And that should give me a 1/4 to 3/8 inch gap between the back of the door and then the trim board around the opening. So I'm hoping that's going to work out great for spacing. If not, what's great about these is they're fully adjustable, so it's threaded, so you can adjust. And even if you have the track up on the wall, you would just back the pressure off on the bolts, and you could then adjust this spacer to move the track. Okay, so despite having the spacers all set at what I thought was the correct height, I did end up having to adjust a couple of them after the track was up there. The other thing is getting this splice together. Putting up the first piece by myself wasn't really a big deal because I could rest things on the trim, but trying to make up the splice while supporting that and holding it wasn't working. My wife had to lend a hand there. But otherwise, yeah, there was some adjustment here, and it did seem like as I was tightening, I had to be careful because right over here, the lag screws were exerting enough pressure and pulling the spacers into the wall to start just crushing the sheetrock. So when I realized that, I stopped applying as much pressure by tightening up the bolts. Here's kind of the look along the line, so you can see nice in line there. Those are the spacers, there's the splice, that's the stop, and then down at the other end sticking out there, that's the stop at the other end of the track for the door. My dad came over and helped me get the doors hung off camera. Not too hard of a process, just got them up here, tipped them up, angled them out, and then set the rollers up onto the track there. At this point, all that's left to do is put a jump preventer that screws in at the top. It's a little block that screws in at the top to prevent it from being able to jump up and off the track, and then the guide down bottom on the floor. I got this with the channel setup. You can get it where you just get one of these and it would go in a groove
on the center of the bottom of the door that you'd have to carve out. But I decided to get it as a channel. So you get these two brackets that screw to the floor, and these actually come with a nice felt pad that goes on there, and so that felt will run against the door so that the door won't chafe on the metal. Now with this particular door, this is the low side of the floor, so this door is up a little bit high, so I cut these blocks so that I can screw down through the block such that it will actually reach the door. When the door closes, the back edge of the door is going to be very, very close to this edge here on the vertical trim board. So when I place this, what I need to do is have it cross over so that it just comes onto this side of the seam there in the trim, and at the same time it just touches the door on this side, because you want to catch the door both when it's open and when it's closed. So this is all it is that prevents the door from being able to jump off the track. You just screw this on to the top of the door outside of the hanger brackets where it'll be underneath the track and go underneath the stops at the ends.
Well, this project is a wrap.